Hey, Bayek, it's me, Ian. And in today's video, I'm looking at this. This is The Collector from 1965. It's a very interesting film, and we'll have a look at it. Right. So, it's a psychological thriller. I think that's probably a good tag to put it as. It's 119 minutes long. Rotten Tomatoes give it 82%, which is reflects quite, I think, of the critical opinion, particularly at the time, about this film. Now, its screenplay is by Stanley Mann. It's a co-writer with John Cohn. Now, Stanley Mann was a co-writer of Damien, Omen 2, which I really like. He also wrote the screenplay for the 1984 sequel, Conan the Destroyer, with old Arnie. Yes. Also, a film he wrote, I didn't realise he'd done the screenplay on this, which was Firestarter, the Stephen King brilliant film from 1984, not the terrible remake. But yeah, Firestarter, I absolutely love that. Anyhow, John Cohn is co-writer of this. He's really a producer, very much so. And amongst producing this film as well, he also produced Theatre of Blood, 1973, which I absolutely love. That Vincent Price film, excellent film that. Now, it's based on a book, The Collector, by John Fowles, and that book gets a lot of praise. I knew the name, I think, really from The French Lieutenant's Woman, which he wrote in 1969, and there was a film they made, as I remember, with Meryl Streep. It's interesting because that book has a certain attitude about this film. Yes, I think it's interesting to look at that, whether it actually does affect this film, the actual screenplay and the characterizations that we get. Anyhow, the main headline, I suppose, about this film is it's directed by a legendary Hollywood director, William Wyler, whose career spanned right back into the silent film era of the 1920s. And he worked on some real old classic films into the talking era of Hollywood. One of the films that really does stand out is 1938, Jezebel, starring Bette Davis. That was a major film. And of course, Wuthering Heights. That is such a great film, Wuthering Heights, with Laurence Olivier. There has been a lot of versions of Wuthering Heights. That was from 1940, incidentally. That stars Laurence Olivier. I absolutely love that film. I've got it in my collection on DVD. I should upgrade, actually, sometime. But it's a brilliant interpretation of the great novel. He was also director of Mrs. Miniver in 1942, which is quite an outstanding wartime picture. Roman Holiday, 1953. That's a sort of comedy kind of film, as I remember, musical. Desperate Hours, now, yes, 1955. And that had Bogart in that one. Good old Humphrey Bogart. Love Humphrey Bogart. But I think the picture that everybody talks about that he was in was, in terms of direction, Ben-Hur. Yes, Ben-Hur, 1959. He directed. Wow. And what a film that is. It's just so outstanding, Ben-Hur. What can you say about it? It's a film I've seen at the cinema. It's a film that used to be on the TV quite a bit, but I haven't seen it for a long time, but that's a great film. And also, he did The Big Country, 1958, which was a western. He did westerns as well. In fact, he's known for doing all sorts of genres. Incidentally, he did Funny Girl as well, 1968, which is Barbara Streisand's first film. Really brought her into the limelight as well in terms of film with her singing career. Yeah, so he's considered a Hollywood legend. Now, let's have a look at the cast, which he was very much involved in casting. Terence Stamp. He plays Frederick. Terence Stamp, well, he's got a very interesting filmography. This was an early film. This was his second film. Before that, he'd done the well-thought-of Billy Budd, which was directed by Peter Ustinov, which he considered good. Modesty Blaze, yes, that comes up quite a bit in the 60s. 1966, directed by Joseph Losey. Far From the Maddening Crowd, 1967, which I love. And guess who's in that? We know Julie Christie. I always talk about Julie Christie. All these 60s iconic people. Yes. Then Superman, 1978, and Superman 2, 1980, where he plays the villain, of course, in that. The villains. He's a great role in Superman, and you've just got to love him in that. Fantastic. Now, Alien Nation is a film that I really like, 1988. Also, The Limey, 1999, and he was in Star Wars, 1999, Phantom Menace, when they started the prequels. And just on a last note, a film that he was in was Last Night in Soho, 2021, which is one of my all-time favourite films. Fantastic film. So he's got a really good career, Terence Stamp. Look at it, fantastic. Then we've got Samantha Eggar playing Miranda. Her filmography is interesting. She's got lots of films. Dr. Dolittle, 1967. That is quite an interesting film that she was in. The Uncanny, which is a horror anthology, which I know Peter Cushing's in that. And then, let's see, A Name for Evil, 1973, which is another horror film. She's in a few horror films. The Brood, now, 1979, Cronenberg film, which also has Oliver Reed. Wow, yeah, amazing film, The Brood. And then The Astronaut's Wife, a sci-fi film, but very interesting. That was from 1999. They're just some of the highlights. Then we've just got two more supporting actors, not in it much. Mona Washburn, she plays Aunt Annie. She was in Hammer classic Brides of Dracula 1960. She was also in HIF 1968, which is a film that I really like, Lindsay Anderson film. And Fragment of Fear 1970, which I thoroughly enjoyed. David Hemmings, fantastic film, that. Then we've got Maurice Dolemore playing the Colonel. He was in various TV roles, these small roles, sometimes quite a sort of military kind of figures, which he plays the Colonel in this one. Yes, he's just one of those actors popped up, because the film really is about the two lead actors. The two lead actors play such a part in this film. Now, the film was shot on a soundstage, basically in Los Angeles, but the location was brought over to the UK. So we've got London locations, which I love to see. I love seeing these London locations. In fact, I get more excited by seeing that than so many other things in the film. You get, let's see, we've got Trafalgar Square, I notice. You've got lots in Forest Row, East Sussex. You've got Westerman in Kent. You've got all these combined together because it all looks fantastic. It always does. Now, originally the cut was 3 hours, but it was cut down to just under 2 hours. It premiered at Cannes Film Festival and did rather well. They got 2 awards for the Best Actor and Actress for Terence Stamp and Samantha Eggar. Kenneth More was filmed in some early bits of the film, but they were cut from the film. And I'll just talk about the plot. Basically, the plot revolves around the bank clerk that Terence Stamp plays, Frederick, who is a bit of a sort of, well, a misfit kind of character who wins the pools. And he buys this big country house. And it has a wonderful looking basement inside, which almost looks like a church. I mean, it does. You go down to this basement. And he's a bit of a character in terms of he starts stalking this art student, Miranda. And in the end, he kidnaps her and takes her back into this basement where he keeps her. Now, the collector's thing is, some people think, it's because he's got this unusual hobby to me, which is collecting butterflies. He's a butterfly collector, hence you see that on the thing. And that some people see as he's like collecting. Is she part of that collection in terms of the way he is as a collector in his relationship with her? But what it is that he wants her to fall in love with him. He's got this twisted view, and he thinks if she gets to know him, she'll fall in love with him. And she obviously has to play a certain game in many ways with him, and to try and get a release, because he claims he won't harm her and what have you. And he won't make any other demands on her, but she's got to fall in love with him. That's it. Quite easy, isn't it, really? Yes. Yeah, even though he's a psychopath. And that's how the story develops. And it's really very theatrical, their relationship. I see it as. And I think that's a problem in some ways with the film. The pacing of the film is that for all this dialogue and for all, sometimes there's not really much happening. When that doesn't often matter in the film. If the script is up for it and the direction, then that usually all is an important part of the film. In this, I feel it lacks. And you see, this is where I think the film has escaped some criticism, because it's William Wyler. He can't do anything wrong. But I don't think it works as well as it should. It's got all the ingredients, but it doesn't really work. Do we really find out about what Frederick's motives are, other than he's a psychopath? Other than, we get flash about his collecting, the butterflies, and we get all this kind of stuff put in there. Then they kind of use a debate about which class he comes from and her middle class thing. I mean, to me, it would work better if he'd have been more of a working class thing. They were trying to suggest he's of a lower class, but we don't get that at all, which you should do in a British based film. We don't get that about his character. I'm saying Terence Stamp is fantastic in this part, and it's not his fault, but I don't feel we get enough of that. about him. You compare it. You compare the great films of the 60s, and William Wyler is not really in there. Peeping Tom and Psycho, which I've talked about before, they are very much films of the 60s. Very much so. And we don't get, the people who are the psychos in that, you get into them. You get to relate to their weirdness, but you get inside their minds even. Yeah, I don't feel we do. I don't feel we do at all. And that's a kind of a weakness. I'm sounding really negative here because I did enjoy this film, but it leaves you quite unsatisfied. It's like I'm so much into sort of the psychology sort of stuff that I don't feel this. I don't feel he's understood this. I know it's said that his relationship with Samantha Eggar is suggesting was deliberate, and he gave her a hard time, and it was a hard shoot for her. And she supposedly lost a lot of weight under pressure about all this, and maybe that is true. Her performance is excellent. I'm not denying that at all. But you feel you want more, and it feels unsatisfying, which is a shame, really. It's such a shame to have that. And I wish I could have loved it more than I did. I think I will watch it again, but I don't feel as satisfied. That's what I was with this as a film. It's not a film that I fell in love with, and yet I felt, I should do. But I'm realizing why. And it is, I think, that people have overpraised it, because who wants to criticize a great director? It's not criticizing him. It's just he doesn't feel he's moved into the 60s of the terms of what the modern filmmaking is happening. You can pick out loads more films of this type than where we get into, I think, do you know what it is? I mean, it just hit me now. There's no horror in this. Yes, people might say, yes, there is horror in that, but it doesn't feel like it. And when I say horror, I don't mean sort of all blood and guts and that. Sometimes you get the horrific feeling, but you don't get that. I mean, what he's doing is pretty sick, what he's doing. And, it's like they've kind of, because of the sort of the novel, they've tried to intellectualize all this. They've tried to make it too intellectual. Yes, that's what it is. Whereas you don't get to the emotions, you don't get to the guts, which you should do in a film like this. I don't know what's happening to me, but I'm just feeling what I'm feeling in that. And yeah, I know that it's full of praise, people loving this, thinking it's the best thing since whatever because it's William Wyler. Well, it's not. It's not. And I'm really happy it's in my collection, because it gives me, ideas as well when I'm watching it about filmmaking, about what can be done to sort of, bring excitement into watching films, which I do. And this, I feel, it doesn't quite get you there when it should do, and yet it's very highly praised. Peeping Tom should be more seen as a great example, and Psycho, of course, which is. These are really good examples of dealing with psychopaths, getting into their minds. Whereas this, you don't, despite a great performance, and everybody else thought so at the time. But maybe they hadn't studied, looking at the history of film, looking deep into what actors bring to a part. And no matter how good an actor is, if the script sometimes is not quite there, then they can't do it. And sadly, this is the case with this. It's very sad, really, I feel, about it, because I wanted to like it more than I did. I did like it. It's not something terrible. And the ending, I thought, was great. I'd like to have seen more reflective about that ending. The ending was nice, good ending, bleak, yes, in a way. but it didn't feel as bleak as it should have done. It should have left me stunned more, and it didn't. And that I put down to his direction. It's simple as that. He may not be great at certain, the way his use of camera and the way the shots and everything, and the lighting, and but you don't feel emotionally attached. And I think his reputation rather overshadowed this film. And it's sad, but I'm really pleased I've got this in my collection, because it's a good example reminding me of how good some of the other films are. It's not a bad film, no, far from it, because the performances of the actors are well worth looking at, definitely. And that's it, really. I'll just show you. Here it is. It's a great cover. You see, the cover attracted me more, but there's something not quite right about this. There's some fantastic extras. The extras well worth looking at, and I'm surprised myself with this way I feel. I thought I was going to like it a lot more than I have done. I did, but there we are. Sometimes we can't be wrong. I'm trying to be as positive I can about this film. That's how it is. Anyhow, I better shut up. We have gone on a long time here with this. So, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. We'll let you know when I produce these videos. Also, if you've got any comments, please put some comments down and give this a like as well. It all costs note, and it's all good for getting the channel out onto YouTube and all that. Fantastic. And that's it. So, all I've got to say is, I'll see thee again.